Hello, friends, and welcome to another episode of Cycling Insider. So, in this episode, I'm gonna give you 5 tips how to buy a bicycle, and specifically how to buy the best bicycle for you, considering your specific requirements and also considering the budget you have. So I know that sometimes buying a bicycle can be overwhelming, so I believe that these 5 tips I'm going to give you now are definitely going to help you in making the best decision when buying a new bicycle. So let's go with the tip number 1, and this is the question you gotta ask yourself: how are you going to use this bicycle? And specifically what I mean here is that, are you gonna ride on the road? Are you gonna ride off-road? Are you maybe gonna go do some gravel riding? Or maybe you are just considering, I'm gonna use the bike for commuting, or I just wanna use the bike, as a fitness tool to get fit. So these are all the considerations in this tip number 1. How are you going to use the bike? Be very clear of this kind of tip number 1. Okay, tip number 2, in my opinion, is that you need to gather enough information about the bike. And really, emphasis here is on enough information. Don't get this analysis paralysis situation where you are analyzing so much and writing all the pros and cons of the bike that you just can't make a decision. You need to be effective in this research, and I strongly recommend you that when gathering enough information about specific bicycles, that you start with the online search about specific bicycles. And then, when you do a bit of online searching, you can go to your local bike shops and also ask the people who work there. So when I say to be, effective about researching different bike manufacturers, for example, you can have a look at Specialized bikes, you can have a look at Giant bikes, you can have a look at, Canyon bikes, you can have a look at Trek bikes, and basically just by Googling bicycle manufacturers around the world or even in your country, you can get a good list of different bike manufacturers. As I said, I've just named here some of the big bike manufacturers, which is always a good starting point to have a feeling about the price and the value they are offering. Now we can talk about the tip number 3. And tip number 3 is to definitely be aware of your emotions. And I say here, be aware of your emotions. Don't ignore them. But specifically, don't just go ahead and buy the first bike you see. If possible, I strongly recommend you to test ride the bikes. And I am aware that with some bike manufacturers, for example, like the Canyon bikes, you just won't have the opportunity to test ride the bike because Canyon is a direct-to-consumer brand, but with majority other bike manufacturers, you can find a local bike dealer where you can test ride the bike. So definitely, be aware of your emotions, but don't just let it drive your decisions. Now let's move to the tip number 4. And in my opinion, this is the one that it might be a bit counterintuitive, but in my opinion, you need to ask yourself a question: what does your gut feeling say? So this is all about your gut feeling. Sometimes when you are looking at a certain bicycle or test riding a certain bicycle, maybe your gut feeling is a bit unsure. And then I would definitely, advise you to skip that bike. So again, what does your gut feeling say? So be aware of that and don't just ignore your gut feeling. And tip number 5, in my opinion, is that you need to write everything down on a piece of paper. So you go from my tip number 1, 2, 3, 4 and write everything down on a piece of paper. And this is very important because, in my opinion, the writing kind of clears your mind. When you have a clear thinking, then you also have a clear writing. So you need to put all of these things on a piece of paper, and if you are going to the local bike shop, definitely bring your notebook with you, and then nicely you have all these 5 tips in your notebook, and everything is there to discuss with the salesperson. So After you go through these 5 tips that I just told you, I strongly recommend you that it's, time to take action, and then definitely you should go ahead and just, buy the desired bicycle that you have, filtered through all these 5 tips. And I can briefly just give you an example. For example, let's say that you have done a bit of your research as I was explaining through these 5 tips, and now you are looking at the website of Trek, and you have made a decision that, majority of my time I am spending on the road, therefore let's have a look about the road bikes from the Trek. And nicely here with the Trek, like with some other bike manufacturers, you might have immediately their resource, which will kind of be called something like a bike finder or find your ideal bike. And this is great if they have it. If not, you can go through different, groups of the bikes, families of the bikes, and it will give you a brief description. What is this bike intended use for? You are in the road bike section, so let's say here you can go to the bike finder in Trek Bikes, and nicely it will ask you immediately, where do you want to ride? So is it like, the open roads? Is it the dirt trails, cities, towns, or even gravel? Let's say again that you have decided that the majority of your riding is on the paved roads, so let's go with this option as the open roads, as they call it. Now also here you have a decision between, are you only interested in kind of sport and fitness? Are you interested in performance or road racing, or maybe even triathlons? Let's say in this instance you are interested the majority in the performance and road racing. Of course you would choose this category, and then the Trek would, for example, ask you, are you interested in a smooth riding? Are you interested in a lightweight bikes, or maybe some aerodynamically optimized race bikes? Let's say that you are interested in kind of smooth, comfortable bike ride, and then immediately Trek would suggest you to go with their Trek Domani range, which is a kind of a classical endurance road bike. And of course, when you open the whole Trek Domani range, you can have, your filters set to, the cheapest bike, the most expensive bikes, or whatever other things. Of course, one of the main decisions here is always going to be that you need to make a decision between carbon fiber frame or the aluminum frame. In my opinion, if you are spending $2,000 or more, I strongly recommend you to go with the carbon fiber frame. Carbon fiber frames are just excellent today. Quality is, very good, and the price difference between aluminum fully built bikes and carbon fiber bikes is so small now that it makes total sense to go with carbon fiber frames on the bikes, and also carbon fiber forks. So in a summary, when it comes to the question, how to buy the best bicycle for yourself, I strongly recommend you to use my 5 tips when deciding to buy the bicycle. And in a summary, tip number 1 is, how are you going to use this bicycle? Is it on-road, off-road? Is it gravel? Is it, only for fitness or commuting? Tip number 2 is all about gather enough information about this bicycle. Emphasis here is on enough. Don't get your analysis paralysis here. Tip number 3 is all about be aware of your emotions and don't just ignore your emotions. Be aware of them. Tip number 4, my favorite one, is what does your gut feeling say? Again, being aware of your gut feeling, not just ignoring it. And tip number 5, you need to carry a notebook with yourself. You need to write all these things down on a piece of paper, because always remember, when you have the clear thinking, you will also have the clear writing. So, all in, this is gonna be it for today. A bit more different and shorter episode, just because I get these questions a lot. How do I buy the best bicycle for myself in my certain budget? So this is it. This is my kind of ultimate 5 tips guide to buying the best bicycle for yourself. I hope you like what I'm doing, and if you do, keep on watching, keep on liking, and as always, I will see you soon in the next episode. Cheers!